You're right.
Hopefully you can cut that bit out.
Everything's staying in. I'm keeping it.
Oh, God, I mean, it's shocker.
Welcome to the Future of Podcast, where I deep dive into discussions with remarkable founders and industry experts, and together we explore the challenges of today and how they are innovating through them to shape a brighter tomorrow. Today I'm in conversation with Andy Miller, co-founder and CEO of Heaps Normal, a proudly independent and Australian-owned non-alcoholic beer company. Heaps Normal is challenging norms and changing drinking culture by brewing beer that tastes so good you won't miss the alcohol. And with a growing number of awards under their belt, they seem to be doing just that. Andy himself has a rich history in marketing, creative and digital strategy, helping local and global brands like HCF, Gumtree, Volkswagen, Absolut Vodka, and many more. In this episode, we discuss why life is too good to be wasted, the healing nature and sacredness of the creative endeavour, building a unique brand that stands out, the importance of customer centricity, rethinking what your target audience is, the creativity that comes with a limited budget, among other things. Having been part of a drinking culture for most of my life and now reaching a stage where I gladly welcome alternative ways to socialize, celebrate with friends and network with customers, I was glad to find such an alternative delivered by a non-judgmental, fun and funny brand like Heaps Normal. I very much enjoyed speaking with Andy, who genuinely embodies these qualities. And with that, I'm excited to present to you Andy Miller, co-founder and CEO, Heaps Normal.
So Andy, welcome.
Thanks, mate. It's nice to be chatting with you.
There's a bit of a pause. I think I need to figure out a different intro because I just did a previous conversation. There was a massive gap, and I think they were waiting for a first question. So, apologies. It's I'll have a think about that. But yeah, look, I'm a big fan of not just of what you do, but also why and how you do it. So I very much look forward to learning more from you throughout the course of the conversation. But to start, maybe let's give us an intro of yourself and a little bit about what you're focused on.
My name is Andy Miller. I'm the CEO and one of the founders at Heaps Normal, which is a dedicated non-alcoholic beer company, and we're 100% independent. We started in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, and we've grown at an exciting rate since then in Australia. And it's probably the short version. I'll pause.
The short version. All right, we'll definitely get into the long version. But no, thanks so much. And I think the interesting thing, in my experience about not just your product, but your brand, everyone I speak to has had their own journey to Heaps Normal. And I think for myself, I was looking for a while. I was very interested. Looking at the trends and stuff, investing in this space. And I was incredibly fortunate to be able to have a little bit of an involvement in earlier rounds around the pandemic of Heaps Normal. And when I learned your name and Heaps Normal, the first thing I wanted to do was I'm going to research. So did the search on the web, expecting, I'm going to have to, drive for about 30 or 40 minutes to kind of find a random bottle shop that have you. But was very pleasantly surprised to find you were just right across the road. So jumped across the road, bought a 4-pack, brought it home, had a little taste tests. And I had that moment of, hold on a minute. I had like a double take at the can because I thought, I think I've bought the like proper alcohol beer. And then no, it was the zero. And when I caught myself having that double take, I had that moment, oh wow, this is kind of like unexpected and stuff. So then move on to the second phase of research, let's say. In my job, I do like a lot of like networking, hosting, customers and that sort of stuff. So, and what I was, again, surprisingly delighted to find that every place I went from, a kind of rooftop fancy restaurant all the way down to the diviest of bars, Heaps Normal was there. So I was incredibly excited. In fact, the only place that didn't have Heaps Normal were ones, and the bar staff said, we'd love to stock it. It's really great, but we're actually owned by a brewery, so we have our own one. So in fact, the only places I found didn't was because they kind of weren't allowed to. And that, I think to me, that spoke not just well, not just the distribution channels rather, but about the quality and the taste of the product. So the one thing I haven't, because I used to go to Vegas a lot for work and stuff, but I don't know if you're in Vegas, because I think you guys would absolutely kill it out there. People hosting customers and actually needing to kind of kick a bit of the alcohol.
Yeah.
And where it used to be somewhat of a covert black ops mission to try and order a non-alcoholic beer at the bar without being seen, now I observe myself and others in the industry are actually proud to order a Heaps Normal. So I've really seen and experienced a shift in culture, somewhat due to the product you have in market. So thank you and the team for delivering, a quality and accessible alternative. Bit of a long story and intro, so apologies, but I just felt I needed to share my kind of story and like, oh wow, this is kind of not just a great drink that I drink whether or not I drink an alcohol, but also the shifts in kind of culture which I've experienced partly because of this. So and I think we'll kind of get to that. But anyway, enough of my rant. Thank you very much for everything you're doing in this space. And we'll get to this.
Pleasure.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I think, it's genuinely exciting to hear stories like the one you just shared, because for us, it's the best measure that we are contributing to our mission, the thing that gets us out of bed every day, which is to change drinking culture and to normalize just having great tasting options. And it sounds like, that's what you've experienced on your journey, which is awesome. And we're also stoked that there are so many other great options out there at the moment as well, that it's not just, one brand doing it. There's so many brands doing great tasting non-alc options these days, and that's just continuing to grow.
Yeah, these days. But I think when you've got someone like yourself in market, it really pushes innovation. So yeah. But yeah, and we'll get to your mission. But I think throughout the conversation, I'd like to drop, a few C-bombs on you. But don't worry, not about to call you or anything like that. Instead, we'd love to have a conversation around company, culture, creativity, campaign cut-through, and community. So let's start with company. So again, you've got incredible business, and please feel free to jump in with any up-to-date stats. But as of last year, so 2023, the organization had an evaluation of around $63 million. You're experiencing 50% year-on-year growth, and Heaps Normal accounted for roughly 40% of all growth in the non-alcoholic beer category, which was just amazing. But outside of that, you've also got a really fantastic founding story and team. And as I look at your website, you position it as a bit of a joke. So again, quote, "A designer, a brewer, a pro surfer, and a ginger walk into a bar and order a round of alcoholic-free beers, ... So what happened in real life? Was the decision to start a brewery made in that single evening, or was it more of a gradual kind of a process?
Yeah, great question. Of course, a short story is always a better, more memorable story. So we've boiled it down, and what was probably a couple of different occasions that we kind of came together and talked about this idea of starting a non-alcoholic beer company. But the kernel of truth in that that joke, as you put it, was the first time that I heard this idea of which was presented to me by Pete, one of our mates, who we started the brand with. He sort of said, I want to start a non-alcoholic beer company. What do you think? And for me, it was immediate. The personal relevance, the opportunity for me personally that I saw in this product and how I could use it was immediate, and I just wanted to jump into it straight away. And that's when I called another mate of mine, Ben, who is a professional brewer and has brewed some of the best the best craft breweries, craft beer. He's brewed some of the best craft beers and of course non-alcoholic beers as well. over the last couple of decades in Australia. And yeah, he, to my surprise, was just straight into it as well. He immediately saw the challenge as a brewer that was there to be solved, whereas other people in the past had just, I think that he had spoken to about non-alcoholic beer in more general terms, or that Pete had spoken to, were just a little bit more focused on the question of why would you bother?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that why would you bother? Because that kind of comes to my next question, like, why would you bother trying to develop something non-alcoholic in this space? But also, given the significance and overhead costs or capex, whatever, involved in founding a brewery, what ultimately prompted the move forward? Was it more, the personal or the market opportunity?
It definitely started with the personal, because we hadn't really gotten to the point of testing it commercially, and we didn't do any, vast amounts of research on this category to get an idea of the commercial opportunity. We just saw a personal itch that we thought was worth solving, and after that, we thought, after we got going on this and we created something that we thought tasted good, we started to think, okay, well, we should look at whether there is whether this is a problem that other people want to be solved as well. And so we did a little bit of research. We saw that the demand in Australia was far outstripping supply, and that there were some indicators in other markets around the world that often precede trends in Australia. Places like the US, parts of Europe were a lot more mature in their non-alcoholic beer categories, and so yeah, we thought that there would definitely be other people out there like us who wanted to cut back for one reason or another, but didn't necessarily identify as being sober.
Yeah, right. So you actually just went ahead. Hey, we want to try if we can do this anyway, with minimal kind of research from the industry perspective. How did you do that? Like, build a whole brewery, or actually we're going to do, because I know some breweries you can actually just walk in, you can just pay as you go, as you were.
Yeah. So we didn't have a lot of money to start with, so we needed to do it in a way that built it up gradually. And so we spent most of our time making sure that we had a brand, like building a brand that we thought was interesting, that took a unique position in the market, that had something genuine to say, and at the same time we had the beer knowledge, and we created our own brewing technique and recipe in-house, because we had Benny as a professional brewer. But rather than go down the path of the usual path that craft beer companies go down, of building this huge facility and then creating a massive financial hole for themselves that they need to dig themselves out of before they even understand if there's a market fit for the product that they are producing, we thought we would try and operate a little bit differently and draw on some of the learnings that we had from other industries, like tech startups and these sorts of things, where you don't dig yourself a massive hole until you've actually got that product market fit. So we did that, and we brewed as much in Benny's kitchen as we could, to a point.
Yeah, wow.
Using domestic kettle, and a whole bunch of old brown bottle, long neck beer bottles as fermenting vessels.
Awesome.
And then once we got it as far as we could there, and sort of the product that we had at that point still required quite a lot of imagination as to whether it was going to taste great as a finished product. We took the leap. We put some money down at a larger facility where we could test if it scaled, and and Benny went down there and to Victoria at Brick Lane, where we first developed the product, first brewed the product, and brewed the product there to see how it would scale. And to our surprise and delight, it we thought it tasted pretty good when it came back.
Yeah, wow. And yeah, as I mentioned, I think everyone I speak to, my experience include, is like, oh, actually, this is this is a difference here. No, that's awesome. So moving on to our second C-bomb, culture. But I'd like to start with more of a societal lens, let's say. Can you tell us a bit more, now you're kind of up and running the business, a bit more about the trends and growing demand for alternatives to alcohol, and how much of an opportunity is that for you and the team?
I think what we've seen since COVID, which was a time when we noticed people reflecting on and reconsidering a lot of different habits in our lives. Like we all reflected on and changed, I think, a lot of habits, whether it was viewing habits, content consumption, or exercise habits, or also drinking habits as well. Since then, we've noticed a really dramatic shift in alcohol consumption in Australia. 78% of consumers of no and low products also drink full strength alcohol, is probably one of the most surprising stats that we see. And for us, that sort of is validation on a hypothesis that we made really early on, which was that there were a small community of people who completely abstained from alcohol and who were sober, who already knew how to use this product. But there was a larger group of people of drinkers who also wanted to cut back, but weren't quite sure if some of these non-alcoholic products were for them. So we decided that was the biggest opportunity, and that's definitely been a trend that we've seen grow over the last few years.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought that, because you think, again, zero alcohol, you're just targeting non-drinkers, but actually a bigger opportunity for those who want to cut back. And while I know and respect very much, actually, at Heaps Normal, you're really not preachy about this, but I'm keen to understand if you've ever had people reach out and actually thank you for helping them reduce or even quit alcohol as they were struggling to.
Yeah, it's one of the most rewarding parts of doing what we do. We probably, even still now, about once a week, we would get an email from somebody or a message through via one of our customers of people expressing their gratitude for what we're doing, and it's really nice. It gives us the energy to keep going, which is with what is quite a challenging task. Starting a small business and managing a small business.
Yeah, a very long way from other brewers going, why would we do this? Like, yeah. And also I love, again, going back to your mission, really challenging the norms. So I'm keen to understand also what role do you see yourself playing outside of producing non-alcoholic beer, and how interested you and the team around other emerging alternatives? I mean, there's been a bit of a shift in culture around cannabis, psychedelics, etc. Again, where do you see yourself playing?
What we'd like to see is just a real conversation around alcohol, and genuine choices be made available. I think when you look at some of the research that has come out, even quite recently around other drugs like cannabis or psychedelics, there's a lot of scientific research there to suggest that they're no better or worse than alcohol. And I think if we're going to have a real conversation about alcohol, we should just be open about what the pros and cons of all of these different substances are, including alcohol, which seems to sort of get glossed over, I think. So like you said, we're not anti-alcohol, but I think it's just important to, and I think consumers are demanding it more and more these days, that, you can't pull the wool over people's eyes. You've got to have a real conversation around what are the risks that you're taking by consuming whatever it is that you're putting in your body.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm actually personally very, very interested and excited about the psychedelic space as well. As you mentioned, some of the research, just really seeing the positive impact on things like mental health as well. And we're seeing the laws and the regulations changing around this because of that. So as you said, I think just more of a realistic and honest conversation around these alternatives. So yeah, really interested in what the next 10 years might look like. And also know, because you moved to Bangkok, Thailand, they've changed regulations around cannabis around there. Have you seen much as a shift in culture because of that? Is it the new Amsterdam, or like how would you describe it?
Well, I think the regulators were, the government was very keen to not be, to start to be known as the Amsterdam of the East, as they were saying. But
Right.
Look, the thing I did notice here was that, the industry seemed to sort of pop up overnight, which would suggest that it was always there. And, now it's just a little bit more out in the open. I go out quite regularly to local live music bars and gigs and, other restaurants and night spots around Thailand. And it's extremely common to be on all kinds of menus around town, but you don't notice. It's not in your face, in terms of people's usage of it. And there's certainly no obvious impact that I've seen, around people's behavior. I think to give a balanced kind of observation, though, there is, I think, a little bit of a wind back at the moment from the government's point of view in Thailand, because they're a little bit afraid, I'm paraphrasing here, but a little bit afraid of people being lazy because of having a little bit too much cannabis. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. I think maybe one to watch if we're considering anything like that in Australia.
Yeah, right. And I think really interesting point you made around actually as an industry ready to go. So I don't know if you saw the Gentleman, the Guy Ritchie movie, and they made a series at Netflix as well. It's like ripe to go. So I thought, it's quite, I mean, pretty dark sort of season. But
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh yeah, it's worth a watch, I think. But pretty dark. But again, because it's at that point not legalized, you've obviously got some interesting characters, let's say.
Yeah.
Awesome. So moving, staying with culture, but I was keen to move to the Heaps Normal culture. So I don't know if you could tell us a bit more about your mission statement. We've kind of alluded to it, but also very interested. How did you craft that mission statement, and how do you cultivate such a culture like that?
Well, yeah, we wanted to just have a bit of fun with it. We didn't want to take ourselves too seriously, because we feel like, beer's pretty fun anyway. It's a pretty fun kind of industry, and we've really enjoyed being a part of the beer industry for quite a while, even prior to Heaps Normal. But I think to change culture, you can't push people to do that. You can't be. I don't think you can really beat people over the head with rules and guidelines and how things should be. They just want to run the other way. So, we wanted to create a brand and articulate that brand articulate that message in a way that was fun and that showed people that this is as much about having fun as as anything else, as alcohol or any other drinks as well.
Yeah, and I've heard you describe fun as an important part of business as well. Why is that?
Well, I mean, who doesn't want to have fun, right? Who doesn't want to throw a great party? And I think that's for us. That's what the ultimate articulation of what we're here to do. We're here to throw a great party and have a good time, and it doesn't matter what you're bringing to the party. What you're throwing in the esky. We'll celebrate it as long as you're doing it deliberately. And it's not just this sort of idea of mindless consumption, which is, what we're trying to get across, I think, with Heaps Normal. When we say create your own normal, it's become a bit of a overused phrase, I think, in our culture in Australia, but particularly around COVID. But it's a genuine call, and a genuine ask. It's something that we think is valuable.
Yeah, and I think in our last conversation we kind of connected on an old TED talk. I think it was Stuart Brown. Play is more than just fun. I highly recommend it for anyone listening. And he really gave a really great insight about how important play is. And I think through the years we're seeing more research on how important it is, but also how it can negatively impact those who are deprived of it. So to see it reinvigorated in a brand such as yourself, but also the workplace, I think it's really exciting to kind of watch. And I really see it come through in, again, the brand, the campaigns, even just talking to yourself and the team, etc., which may move us to the next C-bomb, let's say, creativity and campaign cut through. I know it was a dumb idea. I ended up with a bunch of C words, and it was low hanging fruit for a joke. So I apologize.
I love it.
Yeah, and so I believe your brand's one of the most unique in market. So, and just kind of thinking about some of the campaigns you've run, Brown Friday, you produced a Heaps Normal song by Pandy Candor, which included Mark Bonanno from Auntie Donna, who's always really funny. Some really great campaigns around Dry July. So you've got Normal July, Just Do Your Best, where that campaign you gave away an old delivery car, which was quite fun. But also another time you gave away a jet ski, and I got to get this right, $3,327. I'm going to pause there for a minute and go, how do you get to a number like that? Did you look at a spreadsheet and kind of go, oh, well, that's the budget we've got left over, let's give it away? Like, how do you get to a number like 3,327 as a giveaway prize?
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what you said.
It's on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we went out and bought this ridiculous 90s style jet ski that we painted up and made it feel quite heaps normally, and the leftover change in the marketing budget was that $3,307. So we thought, we should make it worth someone's while, winning this thing, particularly because it took us most of the time that we were preparing the campaign to figure out how to start it, because it's actually a funny story. Our marketing director,
how to start the jet ski, you mean?
Yeah, how to start the jet ski.
Like, does this thing work?
Yeah, that was probably one of the sort of stories in the background that was a funny learning for our team was, make sure it starts before you give it away, because our marketing director, he sort of found this thing and thought it was kind of a fun vehicle to give away, and then a few weeks out from the campaign, realized that it didn't start, and we actually got his dad all the way down from the north coast of New South Wales to do some emergency mechanical repairs to the jet ski. Brilliant. And we fortunately he was willing to be paid in Heaps Normal, and he managed to get it started for us and get us out of a bind. But it was quite funny.
Saved by Dad. Brilliant.
Yep.
Jeez, I don't even want to ask what that meant for a legal perspective. Like, sorry, we can't give away.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't work. Yeah. But now onto the campaign that's essentially running now. So just say no to water. I'd love to get the background on it's brilliant. Like, but I'd love to get the background of that campaign. Where did it come from, and your thoughts around that one?
Yeah, we always want to do something that we find fun, find fun to make, and we're always mucking around with different ways of thinking about non-alcoholic beer, and even right from the beginning with starting Heaps Normal and coming up with the name for the company Heaps Normal. It was always about coming back to just the reality of how people think about non-alcoholic beer and leaning into that, not trying to go against it or come up with some bullshit kind of marketing spin. We just wanted to be real and to just say it like it is, basically, and have a bit of fun with it. So the same thing with Just Say No to Water. We noticed that even a few years in, as non-alcoholic options were becoming really quite normalized, there was still quite occasionally people who would just not get it. People who were still asking that question. What's the point? If you're not drinking alcohol, if you're not drinking full strength alcohol, why don't you just drink water? And so we thought, well, all right, well, if that's the alternative, then maybe we're doing it wrong. Like maybe for those people, if non-alcoholic beer doesn't taste as good as their interpretation of beer, what beer should taste like, then maybe we're framing it wrongly for them, and we should bring it full circle or flip it around and say, well, all right, we'll park that conversation and we'll just say what we do know is that it tastes way better than water. And that water's pretty boring. And if you're going out for a night out with your mates, or you're sitting down to a beautifully prepared meal, you're going to watch some music or whatever, like, and you're standing there with a plastic bottle full of water, or maybe slightly better case scenario, you're standing there with a glass of water. Like, how boring. So that's where this sort of idea of look, actually what we want you to do is just say no to water. Just say no to boring drinks like water, and choose something that's way more interesting than that. Even if you don't think it's as interesting as full strength beer.
Poor H2O. But yeah.
Obviously, we've got our tongue firmly in cheek here, and we're not suggesting that anyone should give up water.
Exclaimer. Thanks for the exclaimer. Yeah. But yeah, and I think I've experienced this myself. I mean, being out, you can only drink so much water. You can only drink so much, soft drinks, etc. So, but no, I love it. Yeah, and you mentioned your marketing director. I had the pleasure of meeting Timothy Snape, and also know you have a rich history in marketing, creative, and digital strategy. So keen to understand your process of coming up with these campaigns and how much you get involved nowadays. Like, because of your history, do you always lean in and kind of want to be part of the the fun in creating this stuff?
Yeah, for me, it's one of the most fun parts, and I do try and kind of take a step back and let the team sort of run with their own ideas, and we try to give everyone the opportunity to contribute ideas for campaigns or for merch or for whatever it is that we're creating. But yeah, I love it a lot. It's one of the most fun parts of Heaps Normal from my perspective. So I still get really involved in some of the brainstorms and putting some of these thoughts together. But we always try and start with an insight, and that might sound obvious, but for me, it's been the starting point for all of the campaigns that you mentioned. Whether it's Just Say No to Water, or whether it was Normal July, or Just Do Your Best, which was like another sort of iteration on Normal July. And for me, that means a good measure of an insight. I think, is one of these things that everyone feels, but no one's found the words to say yet. And so there's always this sort of interesting tension point where you are noticing something like that, where particularly I think you can observe it around people's behaviors. Using the example of Normal July, we noticed so many people in our friendship circle and in our community who were participating in Dry July or Dry January or Sober October or some of these things, these sober months, and they're meant to help you reduce your alcohol consumption, right? For and be more healthy. But what it was doing was, for a lot of the people that we spoke to, was it was setting up this unrealistic expectation, this boom or bust type experience, where you're setting these huge expectations on yourself to to go a whole month cold turkey, just nothing, like from whatever your normal is to absolutely nothing. And then if you have one beer or something like that, you have a sip of a beer or wine or something, you feel like you've failed yourself, and that just didn't really sit right with us. So we thought that was just the insight there. Very long-winded insight.
Your insight always seems to begin with a viewpoint, or as you mentioned, a behavior that people have not really articulated, that kind of tension point of, there's something I'm doing that I'm not totally happy with or comfortable doing, but it's my only option. Or so again, those mini tension points. And I think you and the team, in my view, do a good job at kind of getting to that specific point. And not only that, but what I've noticed as well, and what you've described so far, is even looking from the perspective of someone who you wouldn't think is your go-to-market or your target audience, or as it were. So like shifting a bit and actually being really open to like, what points of view are we thinking about here, and should we shift a little to the left or to the right? So again, I'm not having a great time, not doing it justice describing the approach, but I think, to your point, it's start with an insight, start with the customer, be customer centric. I think extremely important. But also what's that insight, and what tension can we release through humor, great creativity, but also kind of outside of just selling more beer, actually do some good, do some creative good, spark a bit of joy in people's lives as part of that, and have a bit of fun with it. I think that would be my observations on what you've just described.
Yeah, 100%. For us, the creative side of it is super important, and because it's fun. It's this, like you say, it releases the tension in what can easily be quite an earnest topic a lot of the time around changing drinking culture. So that's sort of something that we want to avoid. We want to bring a lightness to the topic, and also I think it allows us to play, when we're as a team, when we are coming up with this stuff. And I think from an internal perspective, when you're playing, you're solving problems, a lot more subconsciously, and building stronger relationships with each other as a team. And what we've seen from the research of play-based approaches, externally, is that, and this is not our science, by the way, this is just science that we're aware of, which is that the repetition required, when you're changing a behavior is exponentially higher if you're not playing. So play just reduces the number of times that you need to repeat something before it becomes a habit.
Yeah, so interesting. So on that point, again, talking about creativity, and again, your position as CEO and your conversations with the CFO, how do you balance the budget versus creativity? Or is it like before. Oh, what's left on a spreadsheet? There you go. Have that as marketing.
Yeah, I think it's really the part of the same conversation. I think that if you've got those constraints are so important to creativity in my experience. If you start with the idea of a blank page or a blank canvas, or you do that exercise where you ask somebody what's in their fridge. They can't name one thing a lot of the time because there's just that blocker. But as soon as you put some creative constraints there around, like, name some yellow things in your fridge, they just start rattling things off, and it's hard to stop them. So I think it's the same, definitely the same for us. I think those constraints around being a small business, having, quite micro budgets to work within, having team members that are wearing a lot of different hats, and jumping between a lot of different tasks. I think it forces creativity. I think it forces us to be creative and to be frugal in a way. It's like a word that we try and use internally as well. To make things work a bit harder, to make, and I think that's, if you're talking about, being truly creative, it's creating something out of nothing.
Right.
The other way that we think about that is to build a community. It's so much easier to build a community, and it's so important. I think if you're building a community to be creating something and to be producers of something, and putting something out there into the world and saying, this is our best, this is our best effort on this. This is what we think. It's almost like, you're putting out these artifacts into the world that show how you see the world. And for us, that's so much. That's the only way to build community. I think the other way that a lot of brands do it is just go and pay somebody a lot of money to create, that thing that they want. And I just don't think it has the same kind of impact. You don't have the same kind of appreciation for what goes into it, and you don't have the same empathy and knowledge of what it means, and who it's for, and that connection then with the end user, for want of a better term.
Yeah, it must be really satisfying as well. Again, a big fan of Friction Makes Fire, forcing people multiple hats, talking to each other, trying to figure out, well, how do we get something really unique and creative done with restraints? That's good insight. On that point, the age of AI is upon us, and generative AI. Keen to understand your views here. So how do you view these tools and their potential impact on your field? So both the pros and cons.
I think the cons I think just the ubiquity of it and the overuse. I think that is there, the potential for overuse that's there with AI. I think it can be quite easily become a bit of a crutch if we let it. If you sort of constantly rely on it, and I think then in that sense you kind of lose the muscle of creativity in the same way. I think, and again, in the same way that we saw with I guess the idea of a second brain, or the age of search, like Google and that sort of thing. It's changed the way our memories work, and I think AI will also probably change the way the kind of creative muscle that we build. So that's probably a bit of an abstract response.
No. I mean, so from your perspective, some reservations, but it sounds mainly around, we don't want to lose the spark. We don't want to lose being human. We feel that if we leverage it in the wrong ways, could be a bit of a crutch, if I'm hearing you correctly, and that
Yeah.
again, that might lose something quite special and unique.
Yeah, because I think creativity is about the mistakes you make as well. So much of being creative, I think, is, it sounds so cliche, but it's about the mistakes, and it's about that serendipity. I think that of discovering something that you didn't think, it wasn't the answer that you had in mind, but you discovered it through this process of going down rabbit holes and stumbling upon something that just works, but wasn't necessarily what you set out to achieve.
Yeah, and there was actually there's two things there, because I think I've always found it worth splitting to an extent the creativity for creative sake, and the healing power of going through creative processes, and to your point, going down rabbit holes to just go through the journey. So as a human, going through a creative process for so many benefits for yourself and the others around you, versus more of a business perspective on, how do we tell the right story in the right way to the right market, and how do we leverage tools to scale and innovate and automate and all that sort of stuff. So there's slightly two different conversations, let's say. But also, I think because again, another piece of research, I forget, it's gonna kill me, I'm gonna remember it a bit later, but the importance of being bored.
Yeah.
So like in the modern day where everyone's constantly on a screen or a phone, there's not 1 second that you're staring out of a window like we used to and kind of just be a bit bored. And interestingly, being bored is the perfect, space for your mind to actually, out of nowhere, like random thoughts or think, and you start to connect dots with conversations or ideas. And I've started to explore this myself in the past year or two, just again, not listening to a podcast, not listening to music, not listening to anything or putting a screen or doing emails. Just, if I'm going into work with train, just observing, just being a bit bored, and then boom, 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 these ideas, and you start connecting things. And as you say, going down these, rabbit holes that you wouldn't have either. So I think there's a lot to be said, long story short, there's a lot to be said about the importance and the creative sparks that actually come out of being bored and a bit, nothing to do with your time. So I kind of agree with you in that sense. These are kind of really interesting tools, and they're doing really cool stuff. And again, at least from a business perspective, a lot of value you can unlock there. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and actually lose the spark of creativity. And again, I work in this space, so I see firsthand the value and the benefits coming from a lot of AI capabilities as a co-pilot. But to your point, it shouldn't be a central focal point for individuals. It should be, how do you aid me in my process and my creative endeavors, as opposed to the other way around? Like, how do we make this front and center as a thing to be done, But yeah, no, interesting. So again, you're actually onto my next question, because it's really fascinating to me that AI is being used in biotech. Because I think the previous thing we just talked about was the creative process around, I don't know, campaigns or marketing or whatever the case may be. But I'm also quite interested in following, AI's use in biotech, chemical engineering, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and even food science, where AI is aiding discoverability around new flavor compounds, nutritional additives that can enhance taste, texture, and shelf life for food products. And first, I love the name of your quote, Beer Whisperers. Awesome. Are your Beer Whisperers exploring any of this technology, like Gen AI, to find new formulas and recipes in the non-alcoholic space?
We're not at the moment, but I'm not sure if we will in the future. I could definitely see that. I imagine that there's going to be potential in that area. There's something I think that we just love about, that being a manual process at this stage. And I think I'd like to, being a sort of, progressive, forward-thinking person who believes in this sort of technology being ultimately a positive thing. I'd like to think that in the future we might adapt to something like that. But at the moment, we just really enjoy the analogness of beer as well, and the manual process of coming up with some of these flavors and different techniques. And so, yeah, for the moment, there's no plans for us to use it in that way.
Yeah, and again, that creative endeavor for the journey itself is part of the point. Which, yeah, I love that. As opposed to, an output like an asset you need to produce. Yeah, I love that.
Totally. I think it's about for us, the focus is not efficiency. I think it really is. Coming up with wild new ideas that we get a real kick out of, and that we find fun, and then hopefully that there's other people out there that share that same view and find it fun as well.
I'm kind of getting hints of if it doesn't make it into your process, maybe it will make it into one of your campaigns.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys could do a really good tongue-in-cheek stab at AI.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those things that we where we take the piss out of ourselves because we don't understand AI.
Yeah. All right. Community. You guys do an awesome job at spotlighting both unique bars and also artists in the community with your quote unquote under the bar and your quote normal people stories. What catches your eye? What makes you want to highlight somewhere or someone?
It's a great question. I think venues that are putting really considered menus together. Really great food menus, for example, or are contributing to culture themselves. So they're venues that are part of the fabric of our drinking culture and our cities that we live in Australia, and places that that we actually like to socialize. Where we like to go, where we go to party, and we have a genuine connection to and relationship to. That they're the places that we start with.
Okay, last question in this area. How do you approach building a loyalty fan base, and what does that mean for your distribution versus e-commerce strategy? Kind of flipped it back to the business.
Yeah. Look, we honestly haven't sat down and thought about how do we create loyal customers, and that might sound a bit naive or silly, but we genuinely just want to create something that is fun, and for the only ask of people who consume our beer or like our brand, that they're also having fun. That they are enjoying the product or enjoying the story that we're telling, and nothing more. And we just trust the fact that if they are having a great time and feeling good about themselves, not feeling judged or kind of preached to, then they are going to come back. We don't talk about it a lot, but we put a lot of energy into making sure that the beer tastes great and that it's a really quality product and really consistent. But that's where we leave that part of the conversation. We trust that we've got really, really great process and a really great products that we've put together. And then, we move on and try and talk more about, the stories that are interesting to us and to the people, that in our community, whatever community that is that we're talking to, whether it's, live music or whether it's a geographical community of the inner west of Sydney or, the inner north of Melbourne, and put our focus and our energy there. So yeah, it might not be the kind of answer that maybe that you were looking for, but that's the version that's what we do.
Oh, awesome. All right, last question. What does the future hold, and what are you most excited about?
I'm super excited about dipping our toe into the US market later this year. One of our co-founders, Geordie Smith, is a pro surfer who lived in LA for a long time, so and has a big community over there. So we're really excited to be dipping our toe in the water over there. Like I said, we're working on our own facility in Marrickville in Sydney. We're building a venue and a brewery.
Awesome.
It takes a long time. We've been working on it for quite a while, but that's still in the works. So hoping to make some really great progress on that in the next year or so. And we've got some new flavors coming out this year, or maybe early next year. We're still experimenting on new products and new beer styles that always keeps us interested and keeps us excited.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to each and every one of those, especially the brewery you're building. So Marrickville, that would be, I'm keen what that experience will be like. Andy, thank you so much for the conversation. If I had to sum it up, I think three key areas or three key points I've taken away at least is we spoke a bit at the start around the business growth and the opportunity in the market, but I think very quickly what that meant for, shifting culture over time as well. So I think that was one key takeaway. And in your mission statement for two, your mission statement and challenging the norms. Again, I think it's working, and I both see and experience that shift in culture. And I think three, just your focus on play and actually just trying to have fun, and seeing that is having a really positive impact as well. Again, play is serious business, as it were.
Yeah.
But I think those are the three key things that have really that stuck out for me. And again, just the process that you go through, and again, trying to guardrail it and holding that almost, I don't know if it's the right term, but as something sacred, let's say, for lack of a better term. So I've really I think that really struck me in the conversation. So Andy, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thanks, Ian. It's been a really fun chat.
Yeah, no, awesome. And for those interested, Heaps Normal, because life is too good to be wasted.
Yes.
Check it out, heapsnormal.com, or just walk into your local bar and restaurant and ask for one. Thank you again.
Thanks, Ian.